Okay, everybody, how you doing? This is your brother from another Brother Maze. Hey, listen, AKA Marlon Rashawn Graves, that's my government name. I have a special guest tonight. And first of all, thank you for joining us. Man, I have to, I'm just gonna say my friend. He's just my friend. I have Nimrod Chapel Jr. How you doing, man?
Hey, doing well, well. Great to be with you tonight, man.
Now, if anyone does not know who Mr. Chapel is, he is currently our Missouri's presiding president over the NAACP. And of course, man, he's also the founding father, or should I say, I wouldn't say the founding father, but he's the founder of Chapel Law LLC, and that's the law group, am I correct?
That's right, that's exactly right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, before I kind of get into your accolades or talk a little bit about some other things that you do, I just want to just talk, man. What's been going on? Because you've been busy.
It has been an incredible time, hadn't it? You know, there's a proverb that says, "May you live in interesting times." And if we aren't, I don't know who is. We have a worldwide pandemic. You know, we've got state, national issues.
Now, with that being said, I mean, we're going to be going over so many different things that's going on currently in the world and what's going on here nationally, but even more so what's going on in the state. And I want to make sure that people chime in tonight. If you're looking to chime in and you have any questions for us, definitely do me a favor, send your questions directly to, of course, our page here at Live with Brother Maze page, or you could do it directly to my personal page, which would be Marlon Rashawn Graves, or should I say Brother Maze, for those that know me. And we'll get your questions answered tonight. So we're going to go right in, and I really want to introduce this young man because Rod Chapel, I just call him Rod Chapel, but it's Nimrod Chapel, Rod Chapel Jr., because I understand senior. Man, when I looked up some things on you, I kept seeing senior, and we'll go more in that here in a little bit. But he's an experienced trial lawyer and the founder of Chapel Law Group LLC with over a decade of practice, ranging from working in law firms with the state, actually a maximum right now at 25 years in state government, and covering a wide range of legal issues. Rod was responsible for a broad array of complex litigation regarding enforcement of civil rights, discrimination, consumer protection, and of course, wage and hour and accessibility laws throughout Missouri. Rod has also received a bachelor's degree in science from economics from Oklahoma State University. His law degree is from Tulane University. Spent a little time down there in New Orleans area, huh?
Oh yeah, I love it. Yeah. I love
it. and of course, his master's in tax from Washington University in St. Louis. Rod is an active member of the Missouri Bar, currently serving on the board of governors for the Western District. And he also serves on the board of and involved with numerous community, non-for-profit groups, civic and professional organizations. As president of the Missouri State Conference of National Association for Advancement of Colored People, Rod is also committed to moving equality forward for every Missouri family. And again, welcome, sir. Welcome. You have blessed our stage tonight. And I want to get right off into this because I know you come from a family of law. Am I correct? Is that what I'm getting when I read your bio?
I'm the first lawyer in my family, although Nimrod Chapel Sr. should have been a lawyer. He was a powerful advocate. Yeah.
Yeah, because I looked at some of the bio and I was looking, I said, well, did he take over the business? Did he start the business? Or was this something that was embedded in you from when you were a child? How did you get started, or what was the interest?
And you nailed it. I think it was, and this is funny because I can remember the year. It was 1975. My dad was a contractor at the time, and he was a small Black or African-American contractor in Oklahoma, and he had just gotten a hard deal. A larger contractor had decided not to pay him, and he was kind of upset about that. We were talking about it in the front yard, and I still remember that conversation because I was, what's wrong? And he's explaining to me that, some of the money we were supposed to get was not coming. And I said, why? And the question was, is it because he's a small contractor, or is it because he's black, or some mixture of the two? And he said he was going to take him to court. And I said, oh, because the judge can make the decision, right? Or the jury. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be a judge, then I got to be a lawyer to start with. And so I knew I was going to law school at that minute.
Oh my goodness. Well, I tell you what, you have been, I mean, everywhere that I mention your name, anywhere I go throughout the state, and even in some places out of state, they know your name. They know who you are. They know what you're doing. So I thank you. And I want to go ahead and jump right into this, because we got a lot of questions that came across when people found out that you were going to be joining us tonight. And so I'm going to be combining some of their questions along with my questions that I have for you. Now, when you think of the NAACP, and I have to say this the way I'm going to say this first and foremost, it seems like the only time that government listens is when white people get angry.
Right.
Why should everyone know who William English Walling and Mary White Overton is?
Because they were part of the founding group, both white folks, Caucasian brothers and sisters of good hearts, who were worried and concerned after a lynching had taken place in Springfield, Illinois in 1909. They came together with other folks like W.E.B. Du Bois, and who had previously started the Niagara Movement in 1905 to create the NAACP in a response to that awful tragedy. And it's funny to think about folks who are concerned about organizing and human rights, who are passionate about these American values that haven't always been as consistent as we would like to think that they have.
It's interesting you say that, because someone had asked me this a week ago, and they said, it's so good to see everyone coming together, and especially blacks, the whites, and other races, of course. And I thought about this because I said, well, when you think of the NAACP, that's how we started.
Right.
That's right. We started with the concern of white people who said, I'm tired of this too. And so there was a time where with the turn of the century, this was a movement. And so do you think that we could even get this far if we did not have the help of other races?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. And every now and again, I hear folks that say, "Oh, well, we as black or brown people we can do this ourselves, and we don't need anybody else." And that couldn't be further from the truth. That A is not how the organization started, but B is not even realistic. We are literally, if in 1909 or even as we are today, complaining and upset about the lynching of a man or men, whether they were in one place in Springfield, Illinois, or around the country as they have been here, we can't expect that people who have been denigrated, who have been subjugated both in law and custom, to just come up and all of a sudden seize the power. The real issue is that we are being killed. We're being hunted in some cases, like Ahmaud Arbery. We're being murdered in the streets, like Floyd George. And it's going to take everybody in society. Now, one thing about William Walling is that he was a man of means, right? He had a private income after some of his family left it to him, and he was able to make some decisions about how he wanted to live his life. He decided to use his efforts to making humanity better, and that was his role within the NAACP. Mary White Overton, very much in the same way. She was very concerned that everybody have an opportunity to participate, and concerned about people voting. Those issues that are near and dear to our heart within the NAACP. It takes everybody. And to be clear, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People is an organization of human beings for humanity, looking at the issues of black and brown people who have been cast aside, who have been, as I said it before, subjugated and done so both in law and custom, and to raise everybody up by lifting that boat.
Thank you for answering that. I really appreciate you getting us started off with that, because that's very important. And I think a lot of people, it answers the question as to why, white people should be just as angry as black people, especially living in today's ages. Now, what was the original purpose of the NAACP, and has it changed its focus over the years to date?
Yeah, so the original purpose was to advance the interest of colored citizens in regards to
Mhm.
voting issues, legal justice, and educational and employment opportunities. That was in 1909. Now, if you went
Mhm.
to the website for the NAACP today, they would tell you that the vision of the NAACP is to secure political,
Mhm.
educational, social, economic, equality
Mhm.
of rights in order to eliminate race-based discrimination
Right.
and ensure the health and well-being of all persons, right?
Mhm.
Um, so it's broadened out, certainly. And if you look at some of the gains that the NAACP has made for Black folks, those have extended to other folks. Just this week, there was a historic decision handed down by the Supreme Court, finally
Mhm.
saying out loud what we always knew to be true, that if you
Mhm.
harass a person who is gay or lesbian or identifies as
Mhm.
such, that is sex discrimination, and you can be held
Mhm.
liable for it. That's illegal. You cannot do that.
Right.
There,
Right.
yeah. So it's expanded a little bit, but in principle, is it is the same. The tactics that we use now are we legislate, we litigate, and we
Mhm.
agitate. Those are the three, and through those things, we try to achieve a higher standard of well being for people.
Amen. Amen. Now, in various years, I mean, or should I say, in past years, various claims on police brutality has been filed in the state of Missouri as well as across the country. The NAACP seems to have been bombarded with requests from all over, especially in these cases. Now, with that being said, though, it seems like there are some limitations
Yeah.
to what can be done with the NAACP. I know I ran across some of those in my local chapter at one point in time, being on the legal redress committee. Can you explain what those limitations are and how have the NAACP been able to connect with other organizations to assist in fighting for injustice
Thank
or
you, and
fighting
that's
against
an
injustice, I
excellent
should say?
question because
Mhm.
one thing in our state in Missouri, the NAACP is a volunteer-run organization. By and large, that means unless a person is retired and truly retired, not working a second job or starting a different
Mhm.
career, that you are working, that the people in the organization, like myself, have full-time day jobs,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So that we often run into issues where someone will call, and unlike when we call Walmart and somebody automatically picks up the phone, unless we have a volunteer,
Mhm.
we don't have that as a luxury. We do have an office here
Mhm.
in Jefferson City that is shared by the local unit, Jeff City unit, and the Missouri State Conference. And in that office, we have volunteers who had been diligently serving at least 2 to 3 days a
Mhm.
week for 5 to 6 hours a day. But with the onset of the
Mhm.
pandemic, it's been difficult to organize the volunteers who many times are retired people and the most susceptible between being Black, maybe having some comorbidities, and at the same time being senior citizens. So that's been difficult.
Mhm.
The resources that we have, though, are typically either donated by our individuals who
Mhm.
support the organization or companies that do the same, by our members. Our members,
Mhm.
the membership dues, of course, are very small, just $30 a year. Sometimes I say that, and people say, they tell me, Marlon, they say, "Well, are you sure that's not $30 a month?" Well, maybe it ought to be because we could do
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but
and I see
uh,
lifetime memberships. I see lifetime memberships whenever I go on page, and I know my grandmother. She had a lifetime membership,
well,
and
that's right.
and my grandfather, prior to just before he passed a few years ago, he joined the NAACP for the first time, which was a great movement for him. And
Yeah.
he says, if I can't be out there on the streets and doing this and doing that, at least I can donate. And I said, that's true, that you can do that. So there are a lot of ways that people can help, from my understanding. I have to ask this question because this came up from a person that met me in the streets, and they asked this question. They said most recently, Black Lives Matter organization has taken the forefront, and that's what you see. You see the BLM on pretty much everything you see now. It doesn't matter which city, Black Lives Matter movement is there. Yet other races, brown as well as American Indian, have shown massive support in the fight toward equal justice. How has NAACP taken steps toward their concerns? And I'm not saying that there's any difference, but I know the American Indians have recently said, "Hey, what about us? We've been saying this for years ourselves."
Yes. Yes, that's right. That's right. And that's a great question. Let me start first with the Black Lives Movement, and let me
Yes, please.
expand our circle a little bit. Just today, we re-announced our 800 number, which is
Mhm,
844 NAACP help, right? So
mhm.
844 NAACP help. And so if you call that number, and in the state of Missouri, that's where it's active. Of course, you can call from anywhere, but it will allow
Okay.
us to be of assistance to protesters in this moment, right?
Mhm.
People who are getting tickets or who are getting abused by police officers. You saw in St. Louis where they ran into them with cars, or Kansas City where they were pepper
Right.
sprayed and brutalized with tear gas. And
Mhm,
so that's one of the ways that we seek to support those organizations. We've been around for over a century. We understand how these protests can go, what's legal, what's not legal, how to organize one, and how to participate. And so if we can provide a
mhm, mhm,
backstop to those people who are protesting now, that
mhm.
is a perfect segue even to the American Indians who at Standing Rock, you may recall,
Right.
were
Yeah.
there. We
Yeah.
stood in solidarity with them in that space. We did that in many different ways from the national organization over in DC. We were able to do that. And then regionally, we try to support every person or people who have
Mhm.
been subjugated. So some of our partners, for example, in the voters' rights work, is Legal Women Voters, right, who fought suffrage for so long.
That's a
That's
good point. Yeah.
yeah. The fight's not over, and so
Mhm,
we do our best to stand with our colleagues.
mhm. Now, just kind of off beat here. How has the LGBT community implemented um, their support? Because I know recently here in the news they had a really big decision that just came across.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that in regards to how NAACP has partnered with them on several occasions?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So within the state, there was the organization Promo,
Mhm,
and so we've worked with them, with Lambda Legal. We've been in regional conferences with them on
mhm,
multiple occasions to kind of coordinate legal strategies to ensure that all people are treated as people. The same
mhm,
horrors that we have experienced just on the basis of a God-given characteristic, our brown skin, has been visited on
mhm,
our brothers and sisters of the LGBTQIA movement simply by
mhm,
the traits that they've inherited from God. So we have stood together in many spaces. We work together and in conjunction on legislation at the Capitol. Sometimes that's
mhm,
through organizations such as the ACLU. Sometimes that's through individual efforts. I could call several names here locally who I run into the halls with at the Capitol, working
mhm.
on issues. Because if it affects them, it affects us, and if it affects us, it affects them. And
Right.
so when we create the larger us, the larger group of humanity, we can really make sure that we have policies that are fair and equal to everybody.
Okay, no, that's just real good. Now we talked before, and I know in the latter 72 hours, Justice in Policing Act has probably been one of the number one things that has been on people's mind, and they wanted to know. And I got the same question. It says, "What's actually in that Justice for Policing Act? What should we pay attention to that affect us immediately?"
Okay, so there are a number of things in the Justice for Policing Act that I would suggest that you, uh, and I'm going to pull up a copy just very quickly.
No, no,
One of
take your
the
time.
most important aspects of that act is we have to recognize that it's not required, okay? That there are no
Mhm,
teeth in it. It's not like a law like we would expect
mhm,
Congress to pass. It is the president saying, here's some measures that you could take. Now,
mhm,
this is going to be really interesting because if we are able to see
mhm,
what I anticipate come out of this, our local communities are going to show themselves for what they are. Now, and
mhm,
I'm not saying that to be, rude or impolite to
mhm,
anybody, but
mhm,
you're going to have certain police officers who are going to say, well, this makes a lot of sense. I believe in this, such as some of the
mhm,
seeking accreditation. Why shouldn't
mhm,
police officers be accredited by a national organization? To have
mhm,
a list, an actual list that encompasses every police officer that has been discipline,
mhm,
right? And for
mhm, mhm.
specific conduct. That makes
Right.
sense. So that if there's a hiring decision, somebody can look at the local sheriff's office to make sure that that individual that they hope to hire didn't get fired over there in the big city, right? And that's the way it usually goes. You get fired.
And that's been a problem. And that's been a problem from before, because when you see police officers who have a track record, okay, of bad policing in the past, you know, one of the things that we tend to find out is, okay, after the fact that this officer killed this person or whatever the case may be, we tend to say, well, wait a minute, they got fired from this police department, or they was, you know, moved down from a position in this police department, and that was 10 years ago. So why are we dealing with this situation now when we could have dealt with it then?
Right.
And so that's the thing that bothers me, because I've seen in several of these cases, I think it was just recently the officer Chauvin was in that situation as well. And then the officer in the Atlanta shooting was in that situation as well. So what are we not doing? What type of background checks are we not being accountable for when it comes to situations like this? Where's the gap? What's missing?
Well, so one thing that we could do would be to look at the psychological profiles of those people who are being hired to make sure that the people themselves are psychologically stable. Some folks who have been in extreme situations, and I'd be the first one to tell you that police officers, peace officers encounter some terrible situations, just terrible. They meet citizens on their worst days. So we need to make sure that they've got background testing. We need to make sure that they've got bias training, and that training is consistent and reliable. We need a national standard for some of the things that police officers are called to do, like use of force, right?
Yes.
And then we need to look at some of the civil issues like qualified immunity to make sure. Now, many of those are outside of the scope of the president's executive order. And, you know, just from a legal standpoint, I was debating with some lawyers today on whether the president has the ability to insist that those things be done. Now, I understand that there might be some financial consequences that are tied to it, like we'll give you some extra money if you'll participate in this. But I'm afraid that it's going to end up being like the vehicle stops report in Missouri, where you have a number of agencies who do not participate. So we'll see.
You mentioned qualified immunity, and I know I was doing some research on that, and it really surprised me. But it's stated here in this explanation for me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But it says the Supreme Court held that when an officer of the law, in this case or any type of case, or even a federal officer in the same situation, conducts a search which violates the Fourth Amendment, that officer is entitled to qualified immunity if the officer proves that the search was constitutionally fit. Right. Is that basically what I'm hearing?
That's right.
That's right. How are we getting? How are we not? Or should I say, how are we not getting past this? I mean, it's just now coming to, because the Supreme Court justice weighed in on this recently. So kind of explain that for those who don't really understand that method.
Well, sure. So qualified immunity works in a civil proceeding, you know, so there's been an issue with the way that a police officer perhaps handled a person, may have injured them. The injured person might say, hey, I'm going to sue you for violating my civil rights. You also gave me this injury. You should pay for that. Makes perfect sense in the regular world. Now, here's how it works with police officers. There's a recent Eighth Circuit decision. I want to say that it's Dalton, came down in April of this year. And it holds essentially that a person who is in police custody already with cuffs can be held in a prone position, you know, face down, forward. And there's essentially no limit to what can be done to that person. That's incredible. That is incredible, because we would expect that there would be some bounds, like you don't choke people, you don't put the knee on somebody's neck. Those things are out of bounds. It all depends on a case-by-case analysis where they try to look at it. So one of the things that we need to do is have a national standard for what's allowed in use of force, so that when officers step outside of that and they're choking people, putting their knee on people's necks, acting recklessly with another individual's life, they can be held accountable, rather than someone saying, well, you had on your uniform, you were trying, or we think you were trying, so we're not going to let you be sued personally for the liability or the harms that you created. That's just flat out un-American. We believe that people
Yeah.
who cause a problem ought to be held responsible and fix that problem. And so many times the courts are the only place that can really do that.
Thank you for that. I want to bring this back a little bit locally. Last week, I was listening to an interview you was on. You were actually being interviewed by, I think it was the St. Louis Fresh Air NPR station. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. That's
Okay.
right.
I caught the tail end of the interview, but it was just in time for you to talk about Tori Saunders.
Yes.
And the Tori Saunders story. And for those that don't know, the Tori Saunders stories is probably on the same, in just my opinion, it's probably on the same level of what the Trayvon Martin case was years back, but for those here in the Missouri area. Can you talk about that and why it's been reopened, obviously, for the case to be open? Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So here in Missouri in 2017, the NAACP issued for the first time in the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People's history of the association in 100 years, a travel advisory for the state of Missouri.
Travel advisory, yes.
And Tori's case, Mr. Sanders' case, was one of the reasons that we did that. He was a Tennessee resident who had a bad night, and I say a bad night. He went for a drive to clear his head. Now
Right.
people will say that he suffered from some depression. Maybe, maybe not. But he hooked the dog leg up out of Tennessee into the Boot Hill. He thought he was headed to I think it's Memphis, but he really wasn't. He ended up in right outside Charleston, Missouri. He runs out of gas. Calls his mom. He says, "Mom, I ran out of gas. What do I do?" Didn't have the money to get that far back, and so she said, "Well, go find a policeman or find somebody. Try to get to the Walmart." His I think a family member, maybe a brother, somebody was going to give him some money at Walmart. Well, he has two encounters with the police. The first, they offer no help at all. They leave him there at the same gas station they find him at, and then the second time, they visit him again and they pick him up and they say, "Oh, well, something's wrong here. We don't know what's wrong." Well, they take him to jail. He's not under arrest. They call it protective custody. That's when they think that you could be a harm to yourself or others. He gets there about 10:14, and probably about 12:06. There's a mental health professional that comes at their request. He looks at Mr. Sanders, and Mr. Sanders appears to be fine. He tells them that after 12 minutes that he should be able to leave. Well, that was right around noon. We know that he had lunch there, and that as the evening progressed, there were a series of actions that you can tell from the videotapes where people are coming up to him and they're yelling, they're waving their finger at him. And it gets really pretty hectic. And so at the end, he's still not been arrested. He wants to leave. They let him make a phone call to his mom. He says, "Mom, they are tasing me. They're trying to kill me." And they take the phone back from him and they say, No, we're not trying to do anything to him, and hang up the phone. That was the last time Mrs. Sanders ever talked to her son. Because what happened next was a individual named Corey Hutchison, who at the time was a sheriff in Mississippi County. He comes in and he gets 10 other officers, 10 other officers, all of them in riot gear, with their hoods, with their helmets, with shields, pepper spray. They come in there and they brutalize Mr. Sanders. They, in one person's words, torture him because they beat him. They sprayed him with pepper spray so much that the sheriffs and the peace officers had to leave the building because they couldn't breathe inside. It was that bad. But he's still stuck in the cell, and they tased him. They tased him a number.
And and I'm painting a picture here because if he can, if the sheriff and others can smell that, and it has to be a small area, a small county jail.
It's small.
Was there other witnesses? Was there other people in jail that saw this?
No. This is a small backwater jail. They didn't have a good reason for why they went into that jail cell. They said that he refused to leave. That was one of the stories. Another story was, we were going to move him from this cell to the other cell. Well, why are you moving a person who's not supposed to be in jail anyway from cell to cell? And then the third lie was that there was a broken plate or something in there. Which there's no evidence of that. And you bring up an important point, because in this policing issue and the reforms that we need in Missouri, every police officer needs a camera, right?
Right.
And there ought to be a penalty if you turn that camera off. You can watch the footage. You can watch them walk to the cell and then click, no more camera. They knew what they were doing and what they intended to do in terms of harming this man. And so there's no footage of it, but we know from their own testimony in the civil case. And you may ask yourself, well, this sounds like a murder, because after the Sheriff Hutchinson had his knee on Tori Saunders' neck, and coworkers asked him, would you move your knee so that we can take a pulse? And he says, no, I'm good. Tori Saunders never moved again unless somebody was picking him up and hauling him out, in which case he still had handcuffs on. Okay.
Right. It sounds like, and not to cut you off, but it sounds like to me, because every time I listen to cases like this and I'm reading, documentation as far as what the officer has said they've done or witnesses have said they've seen, in majority of the cases I've read, and I have been studying probably about 14 different cases, all the way up to the case of this happening in Seattle, Washington, or Tacoma, Washington right now, with the young man. And I have been looking at this, and it seems as if the knee to the neck is something that, as an officer, and I'm not saying all officers, but there's some officers that say, hey, if you really want to get them, put your knee on the neck.
Right.
And it's like it's that little say, well, that's how you get them.
Right.
Are you finding out? I mean, when you read these cases and you see that particular move or that particular procedure, whatever you want to call it, does it make you think that this is something that they said, hey, this is it. They are motivating other officers to put this. I don't even know how many words for it. It's like this is the last move. This is the one that's going to put them out. And I'm hearing and seeing more of this. The more and more I research, why are we seeing this? Why are we seeing this?
It is diabolical. In my mind, I can only describe it as being evil, because in a person's heart, when you know that you're applying such force to that individual with your knee on the back of their neck, or even if you're choking them with a chokehold, you know what you're doing. It's called asphyxiation. You're preventing them from getting air in their body. It's horrible. It's horrible. And this isn't taught anywhere, right? I've talked to a number of law enforcement professionals who have, they have categorically said that this conduct is inappropriate, is unprofessional. This is not what you do. So the words that you're looking for are murder, right? That operating with reckless disregard for human life. That's what they're doing. And that's what these actions are geared to do. They may as well, throw them out into live traffic as people are on the interstate, or point their gun at them and go ahead and shoot them, because they are killing these people. But if you don't see people as people, if they don't matter, if those lives aren't the same as your lives, then maybe they're doing something else. But I'm happy to see that some of these people are being prosecuted. But in Tori Saunders' case, nobody's been prosecuted yet. The governor at the time, Eric Greitens, said that we'll prosecute. The attorney general at the time, Josh Hawley, said that we'll prosecute. And you know what they did? They prosecuted that sheriff for pinging somebody's phone. He was using some kind of technology to see where law enforcement was. So he went to federal prison for 6 months.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. Tori Saunders is still dead. And I can tell you from talking with his mother and the family that they only want justice for his death. They want somebody to go to jail. Those 11 people that were in that jail cell with Tori Saunders while he was being murdered, who didn't do anything, they need to go to prison. They need to be prosecuted. We've called on Eric Schmidt, and he is reviewing the case. We anticipate that there will be a quick decision, because justice delayed. It's already been 3 years, right? A Highway Patrol did an investigation in conjunction with the FBI. We were promised a copy of that. Still haven't received it, but are looking forward to getting a full copy, because here's the issue. If we as Black people are still traveling along the road and we get pulled over more than anybody else, right? Even though we do less crime, if you look at it, than anybody else, less hits from that, less people going to jail, then we know that there are going to be more negative outcomes. People don't need to be traveling through the state in fear of their lives. And that's why we issued the travel advisory, because not only do you have to be in fear of your life, but you can't even be guaranteed justice. They won't prosecute the people that kill you. That is wrong. That is wrong. And we as a
You
state, as the
know,
people of civilization, have to turn away from that.
it only makes me think of two situations. And one, I was in college, and of course, I used to cross Kansas state line going through Kansas City to come down to Springfield, Missouri.
Yeah.
And in that 2.5 to 3 hour drive, I remember we didn't have, of course, the smartphone capabilities then, but there were checkpoints. There were checkpoints. I remember my grandfather telling me one time, he says, if you get to this town, this is the gas station you need to go to. If you get to this town, you get to Clinton, you only stay in Clinton long enough to get gas.
Yeah.
If you get, you know what I mean? And as you're going straight down Highway 13, you get to, what was it? Where Southwest Bolivar, Missouri. You get to Bolivar, Missouri, there was a particular place, and somebody he actually knew, he always said, you can go to that person's house if need be. We had checkpoints. Well, now, of course, we have smartphones, we have videos, and I was reading something earlier that stated that they're trying to put into law that all beginning drivers from the ages of 16, 21 would have to have video cameras implemented in their cars. Now, I don't know how true that is, but this is something that someone is writing to hopefully get passed. Okay. And I believe the state was Texas. So maybe you can shed some light on that at a later time. But I find it that we are now the importance of safety in that talk, having that talk with your children, having that talk with them, especially our young Black men. It's becoming more popular than you ever know. My son is 10 years old, and he cried out to me and told me a few weeks ago, and he says, "Dad, I don't want you to go outside." And I said, "Why is that?" He says, "I'm afraid you're going to get killed."
Right.
Are we at a point, Rod, that because of fear, that we are facing our last rights before we go into a revolt? Because I've heard people say, this is it. If we can't get past this, then I'm not only protecting myself, I am going to, by all means necessary. Yes. Any means necessary. I mean, are we getting to that point that we have to do this or else?
We are. Now, I'll share that with you in a couple of different ways. First of all, we as fathers, we often worry about our kids, and I know mothers worry in the same way. But as Black fathers and Black mothers, the safety of our children has to be paramount. And we've got zero to no expectation. When you look at a Trayvon Martin, when you look at a Ahmaud Arbery, that, these are just your neighbors who are out there trying to kill you, right? And then you put that in the context of a pandemic where we are on the leading edge of death, and local and state officials have no idea. They don't even have a plan. Haven't started thinking about a plan on what to do to address the fact that we as Black people are dying quicker than everybody else. They're just kind of like, well, maybe it's because you work over there. They don't have a good explanation for it, and they don't have anything to fix it, okay? So you put those two things in conjunction with the fact that now we are seeing at a more rapid pace than I can remember, murders coming. They're all over the country, one after another. And this is all positional power, where they have power over our Black bodies, and they are taking it and exercising it. And I'll tell you two other things, and I'll summarize this real quick. The first is that time is up, okay? Time is up. Local leaders, local elected officials who can't control their police departments, who can't make the chiefs in their area understand that Black people have the same rights to drive along the roads as every other citizen or visitor to a state or area, then it's time for them to go. And that is if they don't have a plan to get it done, or if they just sat back and said, well, that's the chief's deal, it's not my deal, then get them out of there. Get rid of your mayor, get rid of your city council, get rid of your alderman. On the state level, because the state level, those officials, they don't have a plan either. We have an attorney general that collects data and won't do anything with it. We have a chief executive who is former law enforcement, who is in his heart a good person, but is not acting progressively to prevent an atrocity from happening within his state. That's not appropriate. And he's not the first. And it's not related to party either, because this has been going on for more than 20 years. It is enough, okay? And here's the last thing I'm going to tell you. There's nobody coming to save you. Okay? Nobody is coming to save you. Your personal safety is left up to your own discretion. So when we say that there's a travel advisor in the state of Missouri, be careful when you come here. You need to do that, right? You could catch the corona because it's out there, people walking around with no mask. We're wide open, even though the numbers are going up, right?
Yeah.
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 You're not safe. And that's the problem. We as Black people have historically lived not being safe in our skin. And that's what we've been talking about in the NAACP since 1909. We're done. We're done asking for people to come and do something about it. We're going to do something about it ourselves. So on August the 4th and again on November the 3rd, we're going in mass numbers to the poll. We can't take it anymore. Literally,
and that's my next question, and actually one of my final questions is, how is NAACP really positioning themselves, especially here in the state of Missouri, to reach out to the young voters and voters that have been absent for years, I like to say, at this moment, especially in a time where being virtual is practically 50% or 80% of your life.
That's right. That's right. Well, so we've done that in a couple of ways. So first of all, we are one of the primary members of the Voter Protection Coalition, a broadband coalition of people throughout the state, headed by our fearless leader, Denise Lieberman, who works as one of our lawyers and is on the executive committee of the Voter Protection Committee for the NAACP. So we are suing to prevent Jay Ashcroft and other sick-minded Republicans from trying to intentionally divest Black and brown people of the right to vote. There's a plan out there that will be on the ballot. We're not sure when it's going to be there, but it'll be up for a vote of the people to literally say that kids don't count. Now, they know that there are fewer Caucasian children than there are Black and brown children right now, right? That may change later, but right now there are more of our Black and brown kids. And so they don't want those people to count for political power within the state. So they want to redistrict, not including the kids. That's going to kick out a whole bunch of people. The census counts everybody. Last time I paid taxes, they count everybody. I don't know why all of a sudden Jeff City politicians don't want to count everybody. Those people.
Does that have anything to do with gerrymandering in a way too, with zoning?
Absolutely. They are calling this is the dirty plan for Missouri. They want to go against Clean Missouri, which voters passed with 65% of the voting populace saying we want to take the money out of politics and we want to make sure that people don't get locked and jammed into little bitty voting blocks who either have ineffective leadership because they can never expand, or that they never get to have their voice heard by their leaders. And those are the two things that they're trying to do. But just tonight, before I came on with you, I spent some time with some new folks. And we talked earlier at the beginning of the program about, well, you know, is this a brown organization, Blacks? What role do other people in the community have? We had some white brothers and sisters and a few folks of color who came in, many new to the organization, saying that enough is enough. And so we devised a strategy to have voter registration before July 8th, so that we'll be able to vote and vote absentee if we need to. The last day to get one of those ballots is July 22nd, before the August 4th ballot. So we're reaching people digitally. You know, we're going to have to use Facebook. Listen, Corona's out there, is killing people. We think that we're about to be in the middle of a second wave. So we're working hard to make sure that we spread the word. We will be reaching out to communities just like yours and saying, hey, if you know somebody, tell them. If they're in your church group, if they are within your community, within your civic organization, share what is important, that every American should have the right to vote and that we need to exercise that vote to get leaders that care.
One last thing here. I have a question that just came in and I want to go ahead and get this while I can. My name is Terry, and I have recently joined the NAACP in the state of here in Missouri, in the Kansas City area. I'm looking to, let me get this right. Looking for assistance with my son because he's a youth that is 16 years of age. How do you direct kids who are not eligible to vote, but get them engaged into the community through NAACP?
You know, one of the most powerful volunteers that I get to work with on a weekly basis is a young lady in the Kansas City area who is not yet eligible to vote, but will be very shortly. She's got a birthday coming, and she just graduated high school. Okay. She is a person who picks up the phone, might answer that 800 number that we gave out, that 844 NAACP help. There's plenty of work that young people can do. And one beautiful thing about the young people is that they believe, they understand that there are core values and everything is not just so gray, and there's not going to be a lot of go along to get along. They want things to be fixed and to be fixed now. Now is the time. If you will ask that young person or email them back and ask them to call 844 NAACP help, I will get them connected with the president of the Kansas City branch, Reverend Dr. Rodney Williams, who is a prophetic leader and a person that will recognize that talent and put them right to work.
Well, first and foremost, man, thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Guys, if you didn't get a chance to see this whole interview, I know it's late already in the hour. We're going to close it down, and I'm going to give some final words, of course, and hopefully you would be able to close it out with some final words as well. But I want you guys to really look back on this interview and just, if you had some questions that you really needed to be answered, I think we were able to cover some main questions that people have been having, not only here in Missouri, but have had, throughout the country. I really think this is going to help you guys. And if, of course, you want to see this broadcast, obviously you can go to my live brothermaze.com website. You can also go to my YouTube page, and of course, just revisit our Live with Brother Maze Facebook page, as well as my personal page, Marlon Rashawn Grays, and I'm sure even on Nimrod page as well. And we can share this information. I will be putting up the 844 NAACP help number in the rebroadcast, as well as my page. So if you are looking to get some questions answered, or if you'd like to reach out to, of course, Rod. Matter of fact, Rod, could you tell people exactly what's the best way to reach out to you personally or directly?
Well, sure, absolutely, and I'm happy to do it. Now, people say all the time that I'm crazy, but my cell phone number is 816-309-5009, 816-309-5009. Call or text. Many times you get a lot of calls, you can imagine, when you start getting it out like this. So feel free to text, or you can email, and the email is super easy. Nimrod, NIMROD, Chapel, CHAPEL, Jr. @gmail.com. Nimrod Chapel Jr. JR @gmail.com. So feel free to do that.
I'm laughing because I remember years and years ago, of course, when I was married, when I gave out my number, I never forget, my wife would put her hand on my hand and go, what you doing? Do they work with you? Do they do that? And I'm like, yes, they work with me. So I get it, but she's good. She must. I wonder if she's buffering some of those calls. So.
No doubt. No,
that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. But I will have to say this. You didn't know this. I did some research on your name because I thought it was so great, Nimrod. And I said, man, and I found it was biblically inclined, of course, and it means the first on earth to be a mighty man. I did not, and I looked at that. It was I think it was Genesis 10, 8 through 12, and it talks about that. And when I said first on earth to be a mighty man, and when you see this stature of Rod, I've been to several occasions where he's been there. He may be small in height, but he is a mighty man when it comes to the legal system. So don't mess with him, y'all. Okay, he's got a lot of knowledge, and he's a good man. But hey, man, thank you again for joining us tonight. And of course, man, I look forward to seeing you and joining you on this fight. And if there's anything that I can do on my platform to help push, justice for the right cause, I'm all yours, man.
Thank you, Brother Maze. It's just a distinguished pleasure of mine to be on. Nothing but an honor to be with you tonight, be able to share the work that the NAACP is doing, how communities can come together, fighting for justice and equality, and just having the ability to do that with my old friend.
Hey, man. Listen, I'm catching up with you, man. At this time next year, I want to be where you're at. Okay.
That's a deal.
Hey, man, you take it easy. You take it easy, and I'll talk to you later, man. Love you, man, and you have a good one, okay?
All right. Thank you, brother. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye, guys.